The transport ship landed on the surface of the Sahara with a low hum. Yoon Do-hyun grabbed his single bag and walked down the ramp into the bright sunlight. The air smelled strange here. It was clean, but carried hints of metal and something sweet that he could not name. He had traveled for 3 months to reach this place. Now he was finally standing on the ground of the most famous combat academy in the galaxy. The Galactic Combat Academy rose before him like a fortress made of white stone and dark metal. Its towers reached toward the pale blue sky. Flags from 100 different worlds hung from the walls, moving slowly in the wind. Do-hyun searched for Earth's flag and found it near the bottom. Small, almost hidden. That seemed right somehow. Other students moved around him. Most were aliens of species he had only seen in pictures before. A group of tall creatures with blue skin and 4 arms walked past. They looked at him with expressions that might have been curiosity or disgust. He could not tell. One of them said something in a clicking language, and the others laughed. Do-hyun kept walking. He had expected this. Humans were new to the galactic community. Only 60 years had passed since first contact. In the eyes of species that had traveled between stars for thousands of years, humans were children, newcomers, not yet worthy of respect. He followed the signs toward the registration building. The hallways inside were wide enough for the largest species to pass through. The walls displayed images of famous warriors from across history. None of them were human. A voice called out to him in the common galactic language. "You must be the new one." Do-hyun turned and saw a woman walking toward him. She was human. Her black hair was tied back tightly, and she wore the gray uniform of academy students. A sword hung at her side. "I am Kang Yoonbi," she said. "I will be your guide today. Welcome to the academy." "Yoon Do-hyun," he replied. "Thank you." Yoonbi studied his face for a moment. "You look calm. Most new humans look terrified when they arrive. Should I be terrified?" She smiled slightly. "Probably. Come, registration is this way." They walked together through the halls. Yoonbi explained the basics as they moved. The academy trained warriors in traditional melee combat. No guns, no energy weapons. Only blades, spears, and other handheld weapons. Students came from all over the galaxy to learn here. Most stayed for 3 years. Some never left at all. "How many humans are here?" Do-hyun asked. 3, including you now. We are the smallest group. Most species send 20 or 30 students each year. Why so few of us? Yoonbi's expression changed slightly. The entrance tests are difficult, and not everyone who passes chooses to come. The academy can be hard for humans. Do-hyun understood what she was not saying. Humans were treated poorly here. That was obvious from the looks he had already received. They finished registration and Yoonbi showed him to his room. It was small but clean. A bed, a desk, a window that looked out over the training grounds. Do-hyun set down his bag and looked at the warriors practicing below. Even from this distance, he could see how fast they moved, how powerful they were. "Orientation begins in 1 hour," Yoonbi said from the doorway. "Main hall. Do not be late. Instructor Vorath does not tolerate lateness." "Who is Instructor Vorath?" "Head of the 1st Blade Division. He will give the opening lecture for all new students." She paused. "A word of advice. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not challenge anything he says. Do not draw attention to yourself. Understand?" Do-hyun nodded. "I understand." After Yoonbi left, he unpacked his few belongings. At the bottom of his bag, wrapped in cloth, were 2 wooden practice swords. He had carried them across the galaxy. They were worn and simple. Nothing compared to the fine weapons he had seen in the hallways. But they were his. He had trained with them for 10 years. He left them hidden in his bag and went to orientation. The main hall was enormous. Hundreds of new students filled the seats. Do-hyun found a spot near the back and sat quietly. He noticed that the other human student, Yoonbi, was not present. She was not a new student, he realized. She had already been here for some time. A door at the front of the hall opened, and silence fell immediately. Instructor Vorath entered. He was Draconi. Do-hyun had read about this species, but seeing one in person was different. Vorath stood over 8 feet tall. His body was covered in thick gray skin that looked like armor. He had 4 arms, each one thick with muscle. His face was flat and wide, with small black eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Vorath walked to the center of the stage and looked out at the new students. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. "You have come here to learn the art of the blade," Vorath said. His voice was deep and rough. "Some of you believe you are already warriors. You are wrong. You are nothing. You know nothing. You are empty vessels waiting to be filled." He began to pace slowly across the stage. "At this academy, we teach the universal truths of combat. These truths apply to all species, all worlds, all warriors. They are not opinions. They are laws. Laws written into the very nature of biological life." Vorath raised one of his 4 hands and held up a single finger. "The first absolute limit. No species can react faster than their neural pathways allow. Speed is fixed by biology. You cannot think faster than your brain permits." He raised a second finger. "The second absolute limit. No species can effectively dual-wield weapons in true combat. The brain cannot process independent limb coordination at combat speed. 2 weapons become a weakness, not a strength. This has been proven across every known species." He raised a third finger. "The third absolute limit. No species can overcome a significant difference in physical power through technique alone. Skill has limits. Strength matters." Vorath stopped pacing and stared out at the students. "These are the laws you will learn. These are the boundaries you will accept. Any questions?" The hall was silent. Nobody dared to speak. Do-hyun felt the weight of those words settling over the room like a heavy blanket. Then, before he could stop himself, his hand rose into the air. The entire hall turned to look at him. Vorath's black eyes focused on the human in the back row. "You," Vorath said. "What is your question?" Do-hyun stood slowly. His heart was beating fast, but he kept his voice steady. "The second limit, about dual wielding. Has this been tested on humans?" Vorath stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was not a kind sound. "Humans have been tested. Like all others. You failed. Like all others. Sit down." Do-hyun sat down. He did not argue. He did not say another word. But in his mind, a question remained. The tests had been done the Academy's way, using the Academy's methods. Had anyone ever asked humans to show what they had already developed themselves? After orientation ended, Yoonbi found him in the hallway. Her face was tight with worry. "I told you not to draw attention to yourself. I only asked a question. You questioned an absolute limit in front of Instructor Vorath. Do you know how dangerous that is? He could make your time here very difficult." Do-hyun nodded slowly. "I will be more careful." Yoonbi sighed. "See that you are." That night, when the academy was dark and quiet, Do-hyun left his room. He moved silently through the empty hallways until he reached the weapons hall. The room was filled with training weapons of every kind. Swords, spears, axes, staffs. Hundreds of them, organized by size and type. Do-hyun walked to the sword section. He picked up 2 training blades. They were heavier than his wooden swords from Earth, but the balance was good. He moved to the center of the room and began to practice. Two swords, moving together, moving separately, flowing from one form to another like water. This was the style his teacher had taught him back on Earth, a style passed down through generations, a style that no galactic test had ever measured. The Academy said it was impossible. Every species said it was impossible, but nobody had ever told humans that before they learned how to do it. Do-hyun practiced until his arms burned and sweat dripped from his face. Then he put the swords back exactly where he had found them and returned to his room. He would wait. He would watch. He would learn what he could from this place. And when the time was right, he would show them what impossible really meant. 3 weeks passed at the Academy. Do-hyun fell into a routine. Morning lectures on combat theory. Afternoon training with single weapons. Evening meals in the crowded dining hall where humans ate alone at a small table in the corner. And late at night, when everyone else slept, secret practice in the empty weapons hall. His body grew tired. His muscles ached constantly. But he did not stop. During the day, he learned to become invisible. He answered questions when asked, but never offered his thoughts. He trained adequately, but never showed his full ability. He watched everything and remembered everything. The other students stopped paying attention to him. He was just another weak human, they thought. Not worth their time. This was exactly what Do-hyun wanted. The combat classes were taught by several instructors, but Varath remained the most feared. He watched the students with those cold black eyes, always searching for weakness. When he found it, he exposed it in front of everyone. Do-hyun had seen students from powerful species reduced to silence by Varath's harsh words. One morning, in the dining hall, a young Vethrani approached the human table. The Vethrani were a reptilian species with green scales and quick movements. This one was smaller than most of his kind, with bright yellow eyes that showed curiosity rather than hostility. "May I sit?" he asked. Eumbai looked surprised. Do-hyun simply nodded. The Vethrani sat across from them. "I am Relox, first-year student like you." He looked at Do-hyun. "You are the one who questioned Instructor Varath on the first day." "I am. That took courage." "Or foolishness." "I have not decided which." Do-hyun almost smiled. "Perhaps both." Relox made a sound that might have been laughter. "I like that answer. The other Vethrani think I am strange for wanting to know humans. They say you are weak and unimportant. But I have read about your world. Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. You must know something about combat." Yunbi raised an eyebrow. "That is more than most species bother to learn about us." "I am curious by nature," Relox said. "It gets me into trouble often." From that day, Relox ate with them regularly. The other students whispered and stared, but Relox did not seem to care. He asked endless questions about Earth, about human history, about the ways humans had fought before they reached the stars. Do-hyun answered some questions and avoided others. He was learning to trust Relox, but trust took time. The weeks continued. Combat training grew more intense. The students learned forms and techniques that the Academy had developed over centuries. Everything focused on single-weapon fighting. The sword was most common, but some students specialized in spears or axes or curved blades. Do-hyun learned the Academy forms. They were efficient and powerful. He could see why they worked, but he also saw their limits. Every form assumed the fighter had only one weapon. Every defense prepared for an attack from one direction. When he practiced alone at night, he found gaps, places where a second blade could strike while the first was blocked. He kept these observations to himself. One afternoon, during sparring practice, something happened that changed everything. The students were paired randomly for matches. Do-hyun's opponent was a Rilken, a species known for their flexibility. The match was short and unremarkable. Do-hyun lost, as he usually did in public. The Rilken walked away without even acknowledging him. But in the next match, a Dralkani student named Gorvax faced a small alien from a species Do-hyun did not recognize. The small alien was clearly frightened. His movements were stiff and defensive. Gorvax smiled. It was not a friendly expression. The match began. Gorvax attacked with overwhelming force. The small alien blocked the first strike, then the second. But on the third, Gorvax twisted his blade in a way that went beyond the training exercise. The alien's sword flew from his hand. Gorvax continued the motion and struck him across the arm. The alien screamed and fell. Blood flowed from a deep cut. The instructors stopped the match. One of them examined the wound and called for medical assistance. The small alien was carried away, his arm hanging at a wrong angle. Gorvax stood in the center of the room, still smiling. Instructor Vorath approached him. Do-hyun expected punishment. He expected harsh words at minimum. But Vorath simply looked at the blood on the training floor and nodded. Acceptable aggression, Vorath said. Combat is not gentle. Weakness invites injury. The Rilken will remember this lesson. Then he walked away. Do-hyun felt something cold settle in his chest. The small alien had been weaker. That was true. The Gorvax had not been teaching a lesson. He had been enjoying causing pain. After training ended, Do-hyun went to the medical wing. The injured student was there, his arm wrapped in healing bandages. He looked up with frightened eyes when Do-hyun entered. I am not here to hurt you, Do-hyun said quietly. I just wanted to see if you were okay. The alien stared at him. Why? You do not know me. I know what Gorvax did was wrong. I wanted you to know that not everyone here thinks like him. The alien was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Thank you, human. Do-hyun left without saying more. In the hallway, Relox was waiting. I saw what you did, Relox said. Going to check on him. It was nothing. It was not nothing. Compassion is rare in this place. Most species consider it weakness. Relox paused. I do not. I think it takes strength to care when everyone around you does not. They walked back to the dormitory together in silence. That night, Do-hyun trained longer than usual. He moved faster. His strikes were harder. The image of Gorvax smiling over his fallen opponent would not leave his mind. He was so focused that he did not notice the door to the weapons hall open quietly. When he finally stopped, breathing hard, he turned and saw someone watching him from the shadows. It was Blademaster Tynus. She was Orlithy, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. Her body was thin and tall, wrapped in dark robes. Her face was lined with age, and her eyes glowed faintly silver. She was one of the senior instructors at the academy. She rarely spoke and never taught the younger students directly. Do-hyun froze. He had been caught. Tynus looked at the two swords in his hands. She looked at the sweat on his face. She looked at the patterns his feet had made on the dusty floor. She said nothing. After a long moment, she turned and walked away. The door closed behind her. Do-hyun waited for guards to come. He waited for Vorath to appear and punish him. But nothing happened. The night remained quiet. He did not understand. Why had she let him go? The next morning, Vorath announced the midterm challenge. Each first-year student would face 3 rounds of combat against training automatons. The automatons were machines designed to fight like real opponents. They could not kill, but they could cause pain and injury. This test measures your progress, Vorath said. Survive 3 rounds and you pass. Fail to survive and you will repeat the first term. The test begins tomorrow. Do-hyun prepared like everyone else. But a question remained in his mind. Blademaster Tynus had seen him practicing dual wielding. She could have reported him. She could have destroyed his place at the academy with a single word. Instead, she had walked away. Why? The next day, students filed into the testing arena one by one. Da-hyun watched the others fight. Some did well. Some were carried out with injuries. Gorvax passed easily, destroying the automatons with brutal efficiency. He walked out of the arena laughing. When Do-hyun's turn came, he entered the arena with only one sword. The automatons attacked. He fought carefully, using only the academy forms. He took hits that he could have avoided. He stumbled when he could have flowed. He passed the 3 rounds, barely. When he walked out, Yoonbi was waiting. "You held back," she said quietly. "Do not deny it. I know what I saw." Do-hyun looked at her. "I do not know what you mean. You moved differently in there. Like you were thinking about each action instead of reacting naturally. You were hiding something." Da-hyun was silent. Eunbi stepped closer. "I have been here for 2 years. I have learned to survive by being invisible. I thought that was the only way. But you are doing something different. You are waiting for something." He met her eyes. "Maybe I am. What are you waiting for?" Do-hyun thought about Gorvax. About the injured student in the medical wing. About the smiling cruelty that the instructors called acceptable. "The right moment," he said. Eunbi studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "When that moment comes," she said, "I hope you are ready." Do-hyun looked toward the arena where Gorvax was celebrating with his Drelkani friends. "I will be." The Festival of Blades was an old tradition at the academy. Once each term, all students and instructors gathered in the grand arena for ceremonies, speeches, and demonstrations. It was meant to celebrate the history of combat and honor great warriors from across the galaxy. Dayan stood near the back of the crowd with Relox and Yoonbi. The arena was massive, larger than any building he had seen on Earth. Thousands of seats rose in circles around a central fighting floor. Flags from every species hung from the walls. The air was filled with the sounds of different languages being spoken at once. On the fighting floor, student champions performed demonstrations. They moved through complex forms, their weapons catching the light. The crowd cheered for their favorites. The loudest cheers came when Drelkani students performed. "They always win the crowd," Relox said quietly. "Forearms make for impressive displays." Yoonbi nodded. "The Drelkani have dominated this academy for centuries. They consider themselves the greatest warriors in the galaxy." "Are they?" Do-hyun asked. "They are very strong, very fast, very proud." Yoonbi paused. "But greatest? That depends on how you measure." The demonstrations ended and Instructor Vorath stepped onto the fighting floor. The crowd fell silent immediately. Vorath raised all 4 of his arms and began to speak. "Today we celebrate the art of the blade. The oldest art, the purest form of combat. We come from different worlds, different bodies, different traditions. But here, we are united by steel." The crowd responded with shouts of approval. Vorath waited for silence before continuing. "The galaxy is vast. Many species claim to be warriors. But most have forgotten the old ways. They rely on machines and weapons that kill from a distance. They have lost touch with the truth of combat." He lowered his arms. "We have not. We remember. And we preserve." More cheering. Do-hyun watched Vorath carefully. The instructor was a skilled speaker. He knew how to control a crowd. "Now," Vorath continued, "we open the floor for the voice of challenge. Any student may speak. Any student may honor or criticize. This is our tradition. Speak freely." For a moment, nobody moved. Then Gorvax stepped forward. Do-hyun felt Yoonbi tense beside him. Gorvax walked to the center of the arena. He was wearing formal armor that gleamed under the lights. His forearms were crossed in a gesture of confidence. "I wish to speak about weakness," Gorvax said. His voice carried easily across the arena. This academy was built by the strong. For the strong. It was meant to train the greatest warriors in the galaxy. He paused, letting his words settle. But lately, we have allowed weakness to enter our halls. We have opened our doors to species who do not belong here. Species who slow us down. Species who make us look foolish. Da-Hyun knew where this was going. He could feel it coming like a storm. I speak of humans. The crowd murmured. Some laughed. Others nodded in agreement. Humans come from a small world at the edge of the galaxy. They have been part of galactic civilization for only 60 years. They are young. They are soft. They are weak in body and slow in mind. And yet we allow them to train beside true warriors. Gorvax turned slowly, scanning the crowd. His eyes found the 3 humans standing together. Look at them. 2 women and 1 man. The sum total of human representation at the greatest combat academy in existence. 3 students out of thousands. And even these 3 can barely pass their basic tests. Umbi's hands were clenched at her sides. Her jaw was tight. "I say we have been too generous," Gorvax continued. "I say humans have not earned their place here. They are evolutionary accidents. Survivors only because their weak bodies were not worth conquering. They should never have been admitted." He raised one hand and pointed directly at the humans. "Prove me wrong. If any human here disagrees, let them step forward and challenge my words. Let them fight me, blade to blade, and show that they deserve to be here." The arena was silent. Everyone was looking at the humans. Da-Hyun felt Relox touch his arm. "Do not do it," Relox whispered. "He is baiting you. This is a trap." Umbi stepped forward. "No," Da-Hyun said quietly. "Someone has to," Umbi replied. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were hard. "He has insulted all of us. All of humanity. If no one responds, it confirms everything he said." She walked toward the center of the arena before Do-Hyun could stop her. Gorvax smiled when he saw her approach. "The senior human student. Good. I was hoping one of you would have some courage." "You want to fight," Umbi said. Her voice was steady. "I will give you one." "Excellent." Gorvax looked to Instructor Vorath. "I formally challenge this human to a duel. Single combat. Swords. No protective gear. Let the truth of our species be proven on this floor." Vorath nodded slowly. "The challenge is accepted. The duel will follow traditional rules. First to yield or first blood. Begin when ready." Weapons were brought. Umbi took a standard sword. Gorvax took a larger blade designed for his 4-armed fighting style. They faced each other in the center of the arena. The crowd leaned forward. The duel began. Umbi was fast. She moved with precision that came from years of training. Her strikes were clean and accurate. She had learned the academy forms well and used them with skill. But Gorvax was stronger. He was faster. And he had 4 arms. Every attack Umbi made was blocked or deflected. Every opening she created was closed before she could strike. Gorvax was not just defending. He was playing with her, drawing out the fight, making her work harder and harder while he barely tried. The crowd began to laugh. Do-Hyun watched in silence. His hands were shaking, but he forced them to be still. Beside him, Relox was muttering something under his breath. Umbi kept fighting. Sweat ran down her face. Her breathing grew heavy, but she did not stop. She refused to yield. Gorvax grew tired of playing. His expression changed from amusement to annoyance. He attacked with full force for the first time. Umbi blocked the first strike. She blocked the second. but the third broke through her guard and sent her sword spinning away. The fourth caught her across the ribs. She fell. Blood spread across the arena floor. "First blood," Larth announced. "The duel is complete. Victory to Gorvax." The crowd erupted in cheers. Gorvax raised his arms in triumph. He looked down at Yumbi, still lying on the ground, and laughed. "This is human strength," he said loudly. "This is what 60 years of evolution produces. Remember this moment. Remember the truth." Medical personnel rushed onto the floor to help Yumbi. Dayu started to push through the crowd toward her, but Relox grabbed his arm. "Wait," Relox said. "There is something else you can do." "Something better." Dohyun looked at him. "What?" "Blood challenge. It is an old tradition, rarely used now, but still valid. If a fellow student is injured dishonorably, another may challenge the attacker in their name. The fight has no normal limits. It continues until one side yields completely or cannot continue." Dohyun understood. A real fight. Yes, dangerous, perhaps deadly, but it would give you a chance to face him properly, on equal terms. Dohyun looked at Yumbi being carried away. He looked at Gorvax celebrating. He looked at the crowd of aliens who saw humans as weak and worthless. He stepped onto the arena floor. The crowd's noise faded to confused murmurs. Gorvax turned to see who was approaching. Duhyun stopped in front of Arath. He spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I invoke the blood challenge for my fallen comrade against Gorvax of the Drelkani." Silence fell across the entire arena. Vara stared at him with those cold black eyes. "You understand what this means? A blood challenge has no safety limits. Injury is certain. Death is possible." Dohyun met his gaze. "I understand. And you still wish to proceed?" "I do." Varth looked at Gorvax. "The challenge has been issued. Do you accept?" Gorvax laughed. It echoed across the silent arena. "Accept? I am delighted to accept. I will teach both humans their lesson in one day. Let it be done." "The blood challenge will take place in 3 days," Varth announced. "Weapons of choice, swords. May the strongest warrior prevail." Dohyun turned and walked off the floor. The crowd was buzzing with whispered conversations. No one could believe what had just happened. Relox met him at the edge of the arena. "You have 3 days. What is your plan?" Dohyun thought about the 2 swords hidden in his room. He thought about the nights of secret practice. He thought about everything he had been waiting for. "I have 2, he said. Relox did not understand. But he would. Soon, everyone would. The day of the blood challenge arrived under gray skies. Storm clouds had gathered over the Sahara during the night. The wind carried a cold edge that made everyone pull their robes tighter. But the grand arena was warm with the heat of thousands of bodies, packed into the seats. Word had spread across the entire academy. A human had challenged a Drelkani warrior to a blood duel. Such a thing had never happened before. Students had skipped classes to watch. Instructors had rearranged their schedules. Even species who rarely paid attention to the lower training divisions had come to see what would happen. They expected entertainment. They expected to watch a human be destroyed. Dohyun stood in the preparation room beneath the arena. He could hear the crowd above him. The sound was like distant thunder. He closed his eyes and breathed slowly. In, out. His heart was steady. His hands were calm. He had prepared for this moment for weeks. For years, if he counted all the training on Earth. Everything had led to this point. The door opened. Yumbi stood there, her torso wrapped in bandages beneath her robe. She had refused to stay in the medical wing. "You should be resting," Dohyun said. "I will rest after this is done." She walked closer. "I came to thank you for standing up when I fell." No one else would have. You would have done the same for me. Yumbi shook her head slowly. I am not sure I would have. I learned to survive by staying invisible. You are different. You make yourself visible when it matters. She paused. I do not fully understand your plan, but I know you have one. Whatever happens up there, know that you have already won in one way. You have shown them that humans do not accept insults without response. Dawn nodded. Thank you. She touched his shoulder briefly, then turned and left. A few minutes later, a guard came to escort him to the arena floor. Do-hyun followed in silence. The tunnel leading upward was dark and long. The sound of the crowd grew louder with each step. Then he emerged into the light. The arena was full. Every seat was taken. More spectators stood along the walls. The noise was overwhelming. Most of it was cheering for Gorvax, who was already standing in the center of the fighting floor. He wore ceremonial armor that gleamed silver. A massive sword hung at his side. Do-hyun walked toward him. He wore only simple training clothes. No armor. He had nothing at his side. The crowd noticed. Whispers spread through the seats. Where was his weapon? Vorath stood on an elevated platform overlooking the arena. His forearms were folded across his chest. His expression showed nothing. The blood challenge begins, Vorath announced. His voice echoed through the arena. This duel continues until one party yields completely, loses consciousness, or is killed. There are no other limits. Weapons will be chosen now. A rack of weapons was brought onto the floor. Swords of every size and style were displayed. Gorvax selected his blade without hesitation. It was the same massive sword he had used against Yumbi. He spun it in a circle, showing off for the crowd. Do-hyun walked to the rack. He studied the weapons carefully. The crowd watched in silence. Then he reached out and picked up two swords. The arena went completely quiet. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the wind seemed to stop. Gorvax stared at him with confusion. What is this? A joke? Do-hyun held the two swords at his sides. They were lighter than Academy standards, designed for speed rather than power. He had spent weeks studying every weapon in the hall. He knew exactly which ones to choose. Vorath stood up from his seat. Human, what are you doing? Do-hyun looked up at the instructor. Their eyes met across the arena. You told me no species can dual-wield in true combat, Do-hyun said. His voice carried clearly in the silence. I need you to define cannot, the crowd erupted. Some laughed. Some shouted insults. Some simply stared in disbelief. But Vorath said nothing. He slowly sat back down. The duel was allowed to continue. Gorvax recovered from his surprise. His expression changed from confusion to anger. You think this is clever? You think two swords will help you? I have 4 arms. You have 2. Your little trick means nothing. Do-hyun did not respond. He raised both swords into a starting position. His weight shifted to the balls of his feet. His breathing slowed. Gorvax attacked. He was fast. Faster than anything Do-hyun had faced in training. His blade came down like a hammer, aimed at splitting Do-hyun in half. Do-hyun stepped to the side. His left sword deflected the strike. His right sword cut across Gorvax's arm. First blood. The arena gasped. Gorvax looked at the thin line of blood on his arm. His eyes widened. Then they narrowed with rage. Lucky, he growled. That was luck. He attacked again. Faster. Harder. Using all 4 arms to create a storm of strikes from every direction. Do-hyun moved. He did not fight like the Academy taught. He did not stand in one place and block. He flowed. He spun. He used his 2 swords as extensions of his body, weaving them in patterns that no instructor had ever demonstrated. The crowd fell silent again. But this time, it was not confusion. It was awe. Do-yoon's blade sang through the air. When one blocked, the other struck. When Gorvax attacked high, Do-yoon defended high while cutting low. When Gorvax used all four arms, Do-yoon moved between them like water through rockstone. It should have been impossible. Every rule of combat said it was impossible. The brain could not process independent limb coordination at combat speed, but humans had never learned that rule. For thousands of years, they had developed their own ways of fighting. Korean sword arts, Japanese dual blade techniques, Filipino stick fighting, European military traditions. They had practiced these methods until they became instinct. Until two swords were not two separate problems, but one flowing answer. Gorvax grew desperate. His attacks became wild. His technique broke down as frustration overtook training. He screamed and charged with all his strength. Do-hyun waited until the last moment. Then he dropped low, let the massive blade pass over his head, and struck with both swords at once. One caught Gorvax's right wrist. The other knocked his sword from his grip. The weapon clattered to the ground. Before Gorvax could react, Do-hyun was behind him. Both blades pressed against the Dralkani's throat, one on each side. Perfect balance. Perfect control. The arena was frozen. Nobody breathed. "Yield," Do-hyun said quietly. Gorvax trembled with rage. His forearms twitched. He could try to fight back. He could grab Do-hyun and crush him with superior strength, but the swords at his throat would cut before he could close his hands. "Yield," Do-hyun repeated. "Or die. Your choice." The moment stretched. The crowd watched in absolute silence. Finally, Gorvax's shoulders dropped. The fight went out of him. "I yield," he whispered. Do-hyun stepped back. He lowered his swords but did not drop them. The arena remained silent for 3 more heartbeats. Then someone in the crowd began to clap. Then another. Then more. The applause grew. It spread. It became a roar. Not everyone joined. Many Dralkani sat in angry silence. But others, from species that had been dismissed or ignored, rose to their feet. They cheered for the human who had done the impossible. Do-hyun looked up at the instructor's platform. Varath was staring at him. The expression on his face was something Do-hyun had never seen before. It was not anger. It was not pride. It was something between wonder and fear, something that looked almost like respect. Do-hyun bowed slightly. Then he turned and walked off the arena floor. The crowd parted to let him pass. Hands reached out to touch him as he went in the stands. Relox was cheering louder than anyone. Yoonbi stood beside him, tears running down her face beneath a wide smile. Blade Master Tynus watched from the shadows of an upper balcony. Her silver eyes glowed in the darkness. A small smile touched her ancient face, and on the arena floor, Gorvax remained on his knees, staring at nothing, trying to understand how his world had just changed. The human had won. The impossible had become possible, and nothing would ever be the same. News traveled fast across the galaxy. Within days, everyone knew about the human who had dual-wielded swords against a Dralkani warrior and won. The story grew with each telling. Some versions made Gorvax larger and more fearsome. Some versions gave Do-hyun 3 swords instead of 2. But the core truth remained the same. A human had broken an absolute limit, and that changed everything, at the academy. The atmosphere shifted. Students who had ignored humans now watched them with new eyes. Some watched with curiosity. Some watched with fear. A few watched with something like hope. Do-hyun tried to return to his normal routine, but normal no longer existed. People stopped him in hallways to ask questions. Instructors called him into private meetings. Every meal in the dining hall drew stares and whispers. Through it all, Relok stayed by his side. "You have become famous," Relok said one morning. "The most famous human in galactic history." Do-hyun shook his head. "I just fought one duel. That is all. You proved that a fundamental truth was wrong. That is more than one duel. That is a revolution." Eunbi had recovered fully from her injuries. She spent more time with Do-hyun now, learning the techniques he had used in the arena. Other students began to gather when they practiced. Soon there were 10 of them, then 20. Students from species that had never paid attention to humans before. "They want to learn from you," Eunbi said. "They want to know how you did it. I cannot teach them in a few weeks what took me 10 years to learn," Do-hyun replied. "This is not a trick. It is a discipline. Then teach them that. Teach them that impossible things take time and work. That might be the most valuable lesson of all." 1 week after the duel, Do-hyun received a summons to Instructor Voreth's private office. He walked through the quiet halls alone, unsure what to expect. Punishment? Expulsion? Something else? Voreth's office was simple. Stone walls, wooden furniture, weapons displayed on racks. The instructor sat behind a large desk, his forearms folded. He watched Do-hyun enter without speaking. Do-hyun stood before the desk and waited. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Voreth asked a single question. "How?" Do-hyun considered his answer carefully. "Your tests measured whether species could learn dual-wielding using academy methods. You trained them your way and measured the results. When they failed, you concluded it was impossible. That is the scientific approach. That is one scientific approach." Do-hyun paused. "But you never asked whether species had already developed dual-wielding on their own. You assumed that if it was possible, you would have discovered it. You did not consider that others might have found paths you never walked." Voreth was silent. "Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years," Do-hyun continued. "We developed hundreds of combat styles. Some use one weapon. Some use two. Some use none at all. We did not know it was supposed to be impossible. No one told us. So we learned to do it anyway. You are saying we limited ourselves by assuming limits existed." "Yes." Voreth unfolded his arms. He leaned forward slightly. "The second absolute limit has been taught at this academy for 900 years. Generations of instructors have believed it. Generations of students have accepted it. And now, one human in one duel has proven it false." "I did not prove it false for everyone," Do-hyun said carefully. "I proved it false for humans. Perhaps other species truly cannot dual-wield. Or perhaps they can, but need different training. I do not know. What I know is that testing one method and calling it universal truth was a mistake." Voreth studied him for a long time. The coal-black eyes revealed nothing. "You are wise for someone so young," Voreth said finally. "And honest. You could claim that all species can learn what you have learned. You can make yourself a hero to everyone. But you admit uncertainty instead. Truth matters more than popularity." Something changed in Voreth's expression. It was subtle. A slight relaxation around the eyes. A shift in the way he held his shoulders. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "this academy has been too rigid. Perhaps we have taught laws when we should have taught questions. Perhaps the greatest warriors are not those who accept limits, but those who test them." He stood. All 8 feet of him rose from behind the desk. "You will not be punished," Voreth said. "You will be studied, and your methods will be examined. The academy must evolve or become irrelevant. You have reminded us of this." Do-hyun bowed slightly. "Thank you, Instructor." "Do not thank me yet. This path will be difficult. Many will resist the change you represent. Some will try to prove you wrong through force. Be ready. I will be. As Do-hyun turned to leave, Vorath spoke once more. The blood challenge was dangerous. You could have been killed. Why did you take that risk? Do-hyun stopped at the door. He thought about Yoonbi bleeding on the arena floor. He thought about Gorvax's cruel smile. He thought about every time humans had been dismissed as weak and worthless. Because some things matter more than safety, he said. Some things are worth fighting for. He left without waiting for a response. 2 days later, Blade Master Tynus called him to her training hall. It was a place reserved for advanced students only. Do-hyun had never been inside before. The room was beautiful. Ancient weapons lined the walls. Sunlight streamed through high windows. The floor was polished wood worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. Tynus stood in the center, waiting. You knew, Do-hyun said. That night in the weapons hall. You saw me practicing. You could have reported me. You could have stopped everything before it started. Tynus smiled. It transformed her ancient face. I have lived for 400 years. I have seen countless students pass through this academy. Most follow the paths they are given. A few try to make their own. You are one of the few. Why did you protect me? Because the academy needed to be reminded of something important. She gestured to the weapons around them. These are tools. Nothing more. The true weapon is the mind that wields them. The spirit that refuses to accept cannot as an answer. You have that spirit. I wanted to see what you would do with it. She picked up 2 swords from a rack and handed them to him. I am taking you as my personal student. This is rare. It has happened only 3 times in the past century. You will train with me directly. You will learn things that are not taught in normal classes. And in return, you will help me teach others that limits are not walls, but invitations to try harder. Do-hyun took the swords. They felt perfect in his hands. I am honored, he said. Do not be honored. Be ready to work. I am not a gentle teacher. In the weeks that followed, more changes came. Other species began requesting training sessions with humans. They wanted to learn not just dual wielding, but the philosophy behind it. The willingness to question. The refusal to accept defeat before trying. More human students were admitted to the academy. What had been 3 became 10, then 15. Each new arrival heard the story of the blood challenge before they even landed on the Sara. And at the next term's orientation, Instructor Vorath once again stood before the new students. Do-hyun watched from the back of the hall, 2 swords at his side. Vorath gave his usual speech about the art of the blade, about dedication and discipline, about the universal truths of combat. Then he paused. I will now discuss the absolute limits of combat, he said. These are biological constraints that affect all species. He raised 1 finger. The first limit concerns neural reaction speed. He raised a 2nd finger. Then he stopped. For a long moment, he stood silent before the confused students. The 2nd limit, he said slowly, used to concern dual wielding. We taught that no species could effectively use 2 weapons at combat speed. This was believed to be universal truth. He lowered his hand. We were wrong. The hall buzzed with surprised whispers. Let this be your first lesson, Vorath continued. What we think we know may be incomplete. What we believe is impossible may simply require a new approach. Never accept limits until you have tested them yourself. Never believe in cannot until you have tried everything in your power to prove it wrong. He looked toward the back of the hall. His eyes found Do-hyun. A human taught us this. Remember his lesson. The orientation continued. But something fundamental had shifted. The students felt it. The instructors felt it. The very walls of the academy seemed to vibrate with new possibility. Do-hyun slipped out of the hall before it ended. He walked to a balcony overlooking the training grounds and watched the next generation of warriors practicing below. Eumbi found him there. You did it, she said. You changed how they see us, how they see everything. I did what needed to be done. What now? Do-hyun watched the students training. Some of them were humans. They moved alongside aliens who had once dismissed them, learning together, growing together. Now we keep going, he said. One day at a time. One impossible thing at a time. Far below, a young human student picked up 2 training swords. Nearby, an alien instructor started to object. Then stopped, watched, wondered maybe this one could learn too. Maybe anything was possible. If you refuse to accept cannot as an answer. Do-hyun smiled and turned back toward the academy. There was more training to do. There was always more training to do.